There's a whodunit mystery surrounding the kidnapping of 78 boys and girls in northwestern Cameroon. The children, aged between 11 and 17, were released last week after gunmen took them from their boarding school. The government has accused a group of English-speaking separatists for the abductions. But the government's claim is being challenged by our guest, Mark Bareta. He is a pro-separatist activist who runs the website Bareta News. He says the government was involved in the kidnapping. And in London, we have counterterrorism specialist David Otto. Thanks to both of you for joining us on the Newsmakers. Let's first try to get to the bottom of who did this. David, is there any, so far, credible evidence that suggests we know exactly who carried out this kidnapping?
So far, we do not have any credible evidence to show who actually carried out the kidnap. But what I want to mention is that we have two incidents of kidnaps that took place within a couple of 3 days. On the 30th of October 2018, the Presbyterian Church in Cameroon reported that 11 students had been kidnapped from that same school, which is PSS Mancon. And the principal and the moderator of Cameroon actually said they had then negotiated a ransom deal, unfortunately, with an Ambazonian group, a group that claimed that they were from the Ambazonia separatist forces. Then 4 days after that, which was on the 4th of November, another 78 students and 3 staffs were taken away from the same school. This time, the group that took them claimed that they rescued them, that they were the Ambazonian forces, and they rescued them from the hands of the military. So we have the Ambazonians accusing the military, the Cameroon government and the Cameroon military of organizing a kidnap to which they rescued the students on one hand. Then we have other separatist groups saying they were responsible for the kidnap of the 11 students that had been released earlier. So there is no clear evidence at the moment who actually carried out the kidnap. But we've only seen the students in the hands of the Ambazonia forces and not in the hands of any government militias. Because, again, that brings one to the conclusion, from the evidence that the Ambazonian gave, that if they didn't have the capacity to actually carry out a kidnap, but the question is, how did they have the capacity to rescue the students and then take the students from where they had been rescued to deliver them where they had been delivered without the same capacity? So at the moment, we don't know who really did it, but every finger points at the evidence, every evidence points at the Ambazonia separatist movement rather than the government.
Okay, Mark, what do you think about that?
I think that this reasoning is flawed, because we hear the moderator of the PCC who told us on the 5th of November that a group of armed gunmen took some 11 students on the 30th of October. But we are shocked because when that happened, none of us were aware. There was no news out there that 11 students had been taken, and it only came to the forefront on the 4th of November that 2 different types of kidnap had been done. And it should be recalled that we, the activists, the Ambazonian interim government, and all frontline groups, they have before now condemned all acts of kidnap. And I want to focus on the first video. I'm sure that you must have watched the first video. There's someone with a beard, and I take particular note at the language. In Southern Cameroon, we speak Pidgin English, and even when our local vernacular will have to interfere with how we speak Pidgin English, that particular person who spoke that type of Pidgin English is not from any part of the Southern Cameroons. As per the second video, where we had more than 78 students being kidnapped, Ambazonians fighters, they do not have the capacity to take students from a school that large and take them to their camp. And I want us to be recalled that we have raised alarm before now that there are fake guys, there are fake militias around that the government has implanted to carry out acts just to tarnish the image of the revolution, to tarnish the image of the self-defense forces, what we call Amber Boys, out here in the international community. Yes.
Okay, we have to look at the bigger picture here, okay? Because for people observing from outside Cameroon, it's quite clear that these two cases of the kidnappings are using children as pawns in what appears to be a propaganda war. Okay, we know that there's a secessionist movement in the English-speaking part of the country that wants to separate from Paul Biya's control of the French-speaking part of the country. So, David, first of all, tell us how serious this secessionist movement is.
It is very serious indeed. And if the government of Cameroon doesn't actually come to the negotiation table to either decide on whether there has to be a federal state or there has to be a referendum, then, you know, we would see this Amazonian movement moving for another 30 years. At the moment, the groups have acquired a serious amounts of weapons. The government was supposed to negotiate this crisis for a very long time. A lot of people have, international communities, people from Cameroon have called for the government to actually come to the table and address the key issues that these movements have raised. But what the government has done is they've given a blind eye and they've just turned their heads elsewhere. The international community has done the same. People are dying in masses. They are being killed by both military forces and the so-called separatist forces. So it is a very serious problem. It would affect the Central Africa region. It would affect Cameroon seriously. If the government doesn't negotiate with this movement, as the president says, then we would see another massacre that will take place. And if we're not careful, that region will be wiped out.
Okay, Mark, you are a secessionist. You describe yourself as an activist. Has President Paul Biya shown any willingness to talk with the separatists?
Well, I think that I am a separatist, or you better call it a restorationist. Mr. Biya has shown no willingness to dialogue or to negotiate with those who are clamoring for the independence of the former British Southern Cameroons. We have heard severally that he has addressed us as terrorists, and he has made it clear that he doesn't negotiate or dialogue with the terrorists. But we have been open. We have been open. I think every frontline movement, the interim government, they have issued statements and have said we are open to negotiate with the regime of Paul Biya on the root cause of how the two Cameroons came together. And we are waiting, and we are hoping that the international community would they would take the case of the American missionary who was shot last 2 weeks in Birmingham, and the recent case of using kids as bait, because we have said that churches, schools, and hospitals in war zone are no-go areas. So we hope that the international community can rise and push Biya on the dialogue table.
Okay, we have to leave it there. Thanks for joining us on the Newsmakers. Really appreciate it.